Now let's begin. The November rain hammered the gas station canopy as Isaac Thornton pulled his truck under the shelter. He'd been driving for 3 hours, heading back from a supply run for his construction business, when he decided to stop for coffee. That's when he saw the rusted Honda Civic parked at the far end of the lot, windows fogged from the inside. Something about that car nagged at him. He squinted through the rain-streaked windshield as he approached. Coffee forgotten. The license plate frame. He'd bought that frame 3 years ago. For his son. Isaac's heart dropped into his stomach. He moved closer, his boots splashing through puddles, and peered through the driver's window. Curtis was slumped in the seat, a thin blanket wrapped around his shoulders. In the back, Isaac could make out the small form of his granddaughter Emma, 4 years old, curled up on a pile of clothes with her stuffed rabbit. Isaac rapped hard on the window. Curtis jerked awake, disoriented, then his eyes focused on his father's face. The look that passed between them made Isaac's chest tighten. Shame, desperation, defeat. Curtis opened the door slowly, like a man bracing for judgment. He was 32, but looked 45. Unshaven, hollow-eyed, his clothes rumpled and stained. The strong, confident son Isaac remembered had been replaced by this ghost. "Dad," Curtis said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Where's the apartment I paid for?" Isaac demanded, though he already knew the answer wouldn't be good. 6 months ago, he'd given Curtis $5,000 for first and last month's rent after the separation from Alice. His son had promised he was getting back on his feet. Curtis looked down at his hands. Her mother and her parents changed the locks. They said I have no rights to my own son. They kicked us out and kept Matthew. The words hung in the cold air between them. Matthew, the baby, 9 months old when Isaac had last seen him, giggling as Curtis bounced him on his knee. Kept him? What do you mean kept him? Curtis's voice cracked. They took him, Dad. Alice claimed I was unstable. Her father, Reynaldo, he's got connections with a lawyer named Terry O'Connell. They filed emergency custody papers. Said I was dangerous. The judge didn't even let me speak. Just took my son. Then they emptied the apartment while I was at work. Changed the locks. When I came back, everything was on the curb. They kept half my stuff, said it was compensation for damages I never caused. Isaac felt a familiar cold fury settling into his bones. The same ice calm that had gotten him through 30 years of construction work, through his wife's death from cancer, through every betrayal and hardship life had thrown his way. But this was different. This was his family. You've been living in your car? With Emma? 3 weeks now, Curtis admitted. I've been working day labor when I can get it. Emma. I had to pull her out of preschool. I can't afford it anymore. They garnish my wages for child support for Matthew. $900 a month. For a son I'm not allowed to see. And the $5,000. Curtis's jaw tightened. Alice's mother, Georgina, she's on the board of family court advisors. She knew exactly when I got that money. The lawyer O'Connell filed some motion claiming it was proof I had hidden assets. The judge ordered me to pay it for back child support, even though we were still together when Matthew was born. By the time I fought it, the money was gone. Isaac stood in the rain, processing this. His son had been systematically destroyed. This wasn't just a bad breakup. This was predatory. He opened the car door wider. Get out. Follow me. Where are we going? Isaac's eyes were hard as flint. To make them pay. I know exactly how. Curtis hesitated. Then something shifted in his expression, a flicker of the man he used to be. He nodded slowly and climbed out. Together they moved Emma to Isaac's truck, the little girl barely stirring as her father buckled her into the back seat. We're going to your house, Curtis asked as Isaac started the engine. First, we're going to get you and Emma cleaned up, fed, and rested. Then you're going to tell me everything, and I mean everything, about Alice Whitaker and her family. Every detail, every conversation, every person involved. Dad, they have lawyers. They have judges in their pocket. I've tried everything. You tried their game, Isaac interrupted. Now we play mine. They drove in silence for a while, the windshield wipers beating a steady rhythm. Isaac lived 40 minutes outside the city in a 3-bedroom house he'd built himself 20 years ago. It was paid off, solid, and private, set back from the road on 5 acres of wooded land. As they pulled into the driveway, Curtis finally spoke again. They'll come after you too if you help me. That's what Georgina does. She destroys anyone who gets in her way. Isaac killed the engine and looked at his son. Let them try. Inside the house, Isaac got Emma settled in the guest room while Curtis showered. By the time his son emerged, Isaac had coffee brewing and was pulling together sandwiches. Curtis looked more human, though the weight in his eyes remained. "Eat," Isaac ordered. "Then talk." Between bites, Curtis laid out the nightmare of the past year. He and Alice had met through friends, dated for 8 months before she got pregnant. Marriage seemed like the right thing to do. For a while, it was good. Emma from Curtis's previous relationship had taken to Alice. Matthew was born healthy. They had a small apartment, tight on money, but managing. Then the shift happened. It was subtle at first, Curtis explained. Alice started going to her parents' house more, taking Matthew with her. She'd come home and criticize everything. My job, our apartment, how I dressed, how I talked. Her mother, Georgina, she'd call at weird hours. I'd hear them whispering on the phone. When did it turn? 4 months ago. Alice came home one day and said she was done. Just like that. Said she deserved better, that Matthew deserved better. I suggested counseling. She laughed. Then Reynaldo showed up with a truck the next day. They moved her stuff out while I was at work. I came home to half an empty apartment and a text saying she'd filed for separation. Isaac sipped his coffee, his mind working. And the custody? That's where it got weird. The court date was supposed to be 2 months out. Suddenly it moved up. I got a notice on a Tuesday that I had to appear on Thursday. I couldn't get time off work. I'd just started a new job at a warehouse. I called the court, tried to explain. They said if I didn't show, it would be a default judgment. So you went. I went. But the courtroom, Dad, the judge barely looked at me. Terry O'Connell, Alice's lawyer, he presented all these documents claiming I was abusive, negligent, a danger to Matthew. Complete lies. I tried to defend myself, but I didn't have a lawyer. Couldn't afford one. The judge cut me off, said the evidence was clear, granted Alice temporary full custody. Then O'Connell filed motions for child support, for back payment of expenses, for exclusive use of the apartment. It was like watching a machine I couldn't stop. Curtis's hands were shaking now. I tried to see Matthew. Went to Alice's parents' house where she was staying. Georgina threatened to call the police for harassment. Reynaldo stood there with this smug smile, said I should have been a better man. I tried going through the court again. Filed motions for visitation. Every time, O'Connell would file a counter-motion claiming I was unstable or dangerous. The judge, same judge every time. This woman named Dorothea Wagner, she'd side with Alice. Always. Isaac set down his cup with careful precision. Dorothea Wagner. And Georgina's on the family court advisory board. Yeah, I looked into it after the 3rd time. Georgina Whitaker has been on that board for 12 years. She's connected to half the judges in the county. And get this. I started asking around, talking to other guys in my situation. There are dozens of them, Dad. Dozens of fathers who lost custody under weird circumstances. Most of them had cases that went through Judge Wagner. Most of them faced Terry O'Connell. Now Isaac's attention sharpened. This is a pattern. I think so. But what can I do? I'm broke. I'm homeless. I'm working cash jobs because they garnish my wages. Even if I could prove something, who would listen? Isaac stood and walked to the window, looking out at the darkened woods. Rain continued to fall. He was quiet for a long moment, then turned back to his son. Tell me about Reynaldo and Georgina. Not just what they did to you. Who they are. What they do. Where they're vulnerable. Curtis frowned. Vulnerable. Everyone has weak points, Isaac said. You can't fight them in their rigged game. But every system has cracks. Every person has secrets. We find those cracks, we exploit them, and we get Matthew back. And we make damn sure they never do this to another family. Something like hope flickered across Curtis's face. Reynaldo owns a property management company. Commercial real estate, apartment buildings. He's always talking about his deals, how connected he is. Georgina runs a nonprofit called Safe Families Foundation. They claim to help at-risk children, but I always thought it was weird how much money she seemed to control. And Alice. Curtis's expression hardened. Alice is good at playing victim. She's got this thing where she can turn on tears like a faucet, make anyone believe whatever story she's selling. But here's what I figured out too late. I wasn't her first. I talked to a guy named Modesto Maynard whose brother dated Alice 5 years ago. Same pattern. Got her pregnant. She seemed great, then turned on him. Her parents helped her destroy him in court. He lost custody of his daughter, pays support, never sees the kid. Isaac absorbed this, the picture becoming clearer. The Whitakers weren't just cruel, They were running a system. Alice was the bait, Georgina and Reynaldo were the enforcers, and they were using the court system as their weapon. How many guys has Alice done this to? That I know of. 3, including me. But Modesto's brother said he knew of at least 2 others. All of them had kids. All of them lost custody. All of them are paying support. That's a revenue stream, Isaac said quietly. They're farming children for child support payments. The cold fury was back, but now it was focused. Isaac had spent 30 years in construction. He knew how to build things, but he also knew how to find structural weaknesses. How to apply pressure in exactly the right place to bring the whole thing down. He pulled out his phone and started making notes. Here's what we're going to do. Tomorrow, you and Emma stay here. I'm going to take a sick day from my sites and do some research. I need to understand the full scope of what we're dealing with. Then we're going to build a case. Not the legal kind they can manipulate, but the kind that destroys them where it matters most. Where's that? Isaac smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. Their reputation. Their money. Their freedom. By the time we're done, Georgina and Reynaldo will wish they'd never heard the name Thornton. And Alice will learn there are consequences for using children as weapons. Curtis stared at his father. This could get ugly. It already is ugly, Isaac replied. We're just going to make it fair. That night, after Curtis and Emma were asleep in the guest rooms, Isaac sat at his kitchen table with his laptop and a notepad. He started with public records. Reynaldo Whitaker's property company was called Whitaker Holdings. It owned 17 properties in the county, mostly older apartment buildings, and a few commercial spaces. The nonprofit Georgina ran had a website with photos of smiling children and testimonials from grateful families. But when Isaac dug into the financial disclosures, nonprofits had to file public tax forms. The numbers didn't add up. Safe Families Foundation claimed to serve over 200 families a year, with a budget of $1.2 million. But the actual services provided seemed minimal. Most of the money went to administrative costs and consultant fees. Isaac opened another tab and searched for Terry O'Connell. The lawyer had a small practice specializing in family law. His website boasted a 95% success rate in custody cases. The testimonials were all from mothers who'd won full custody. Not a single father in sight. He cross-referenced O'Connell's cases with Judge Dorothea Wagner's docket. Over the past 5 years, O'Connell had appeared before Wagner 127 times. He'd won 121 of those cases. The statistical improbability of that was staggering. Isaac sat back, the pieces assembling in his mind. This wasn't just about his son. This was a corrupt network that had been operating for years, destroying families and profiting from it. Taking them down would require more than anger. It would require precision. He picked up his phone and called an old friend. Owen, he said when the line connected. It's Isaac Thornton. I need a favor. And before you say no, you should know this is about my grandson. Erwin McCoy had been Isaac's foreman back when he was running his biggest projects. He'd retired 5 years ago, but stayed in touch. More importantly, Erwin had a daughter who worked as a court reporter. After Isaac explained the situation, Erwin was silent for a moment. Then, my daughter Madeline has mentioned Judge Wagner. Nothing concrete, but there have been rumors. Cases that don't smell right. I'll talk to her, see what she knows. But Isaac, if this is as dirty as you think, you need to be careful. These people have power. I'm not interested in being careful, Isaac said. I'm interested in getting my grandson back and making sure they can't hurt anyone else. Fair enough. Give me a couple days. I'll reach out. Isaac hung up and returned to his research. He pulled up social media profiles next. Alice's Facebook was a gallery of performative motherhood, photos of Matthew with captions about single mom strength and overcoming adversity. The comments were full of support from women praising her bravery. No mention anywhere of Curtis or the fact that Matthew had a father. Georgina's profile was more polished, befitting a nonprofit director. Photos from charity events, posed shots with local politicians, articles about Safe Families Foundation's work. She projected authority and compassion in carefully curated equal measures. Reynaldo was less active online, but his LinkedIn showed a man who fancied himself a power player. Connections to city council members, planning commission officials, and a roster of business associates that read like a who's who of local commerce. Isaac made notes on each of them, building psychological profiles. Georgina was the strategist, the one who'd built this system. She was motivated by control and status. Reynaldo was the money man, motivated by greed and ego. Alice was the operator, motivated by entitlement and whatever psychology drove her to repeatedly trap and destroy men. The weak point would be Alice. She was impulsive where her parents were calculated. If Isaac could pressure her in the right way, she might crack. But he'd need leverage. He worked until 3 in the morning, building a timeline of events, a network map of connections, and a list of potential allies and pressure points. By the time he finally went to bed, he had the skeleton of a plan. The next morning, Isaac woke to the smell of coffee and found Curtis in the kitchen, Emma coloring at the table. Couldn't sleep much, Curtis admitted. Kept thinking about Matthew. Wondering if he's okay, if he remembers me. He's 9 months old, Isaac said gently. He won't remember these months. Which is why we're getting him back before more time passes. Emma looked up from her coloring. Are we going to get Matthew, Papa? Isaac knelt down beside his granddaughter. Yes, sweetheart. We are. Good, Emma said seriously. I miss my brother. The simple statement hit Isaac harder than any of Curtis's explanations. This little girl had already lost so much. Her own mother had left when she was 2, leaving Curtis to raise her alone. Now she'd lost her baby brother and her home. Isaac straightened up, his resolve hardening even further. This wasn't just about Curtis anymore. It was about Emma. About Matthew. About every family the Whitakers had torn apart. I need you to do something for me, Isaac told Curtis. I need you to write down everything you can remember about Alice's friends, Reynaldo's business associates, Georgina's connections. Names, places, conversations. Anything that seemed off or unusual. Can you do that? Curtis nodded. Yeah, I can do that. Good. Because we're going to war, and I need intelligence. Over the next week, Isaac methodically built his case. Irwin called back with information from his daughter Madeline. Judge Wagner had a reputation among court reporters for being friendly to certain lawyers, particularly O'Connell. There were whispers of fixed outcomes, of cases decided before they ever reached the courtroom. But it was all rumor, nothing provable. Isaac also reached out to Modesto Maynard, the man Curtis had mentioned. Modesto was hesitant at first, but when Isaac explained what he was planning, the man agreed to meet. They met at a diner on the edge of town. Modesto brought his brother, Ricky LeBlanc, the man who'd lost custody of his daughter to Alice. Ricky was bitter, understandably. She destroyed my life, he said, stirring his coffee with mechanical precision. I was working construction, making good money. We had a daughter named Maya. Alice was sweet, supportive, until the pregnancy was confirmed. Then it was like a switch flipped. She became demanding, critical. I thought it was hormones. After Maya was born, it got worse. Then one day, just like with your son, she was done. Her parents showed up, moved her out, and within a month I was in court being painted as an abusive deadbeat. Same judge? Isaac asked. Same judge. Wagner. Same lawyer, O'Connell. I tried to fight it, but I couldn't afford a good attorney. I represented myself, which was a mistake. They annihilated me. I haven't seen Maya in 4 years. She's 6 now. I pay $800 a month in support, but I'm not allowed supervised visits, phone calls, nothing. Alice told the court I was a danger to my own daughter. Based on what evidence? Ricky laughed bitterly. Her word. She cried on the stand, said I'd grabbed her arm once during an argument. Complete fabrication. But Wagner ate it up. Granted her full custody, restraining order, the works. Isaac leaned forward. If I could prove this was a pattern, that Alice, her parents, this lawyer, and the judge are running a scheme, would you be willing to testify? Ricky and Modesto exchanged glances. Testify where? Ricky asked. The same court that already destroyed me? Not in court, Isaac said. I'm thinking bigger than that. He spent the next hour laying out what he'd discovered and what he was planning. By the time he was done, both men were leaning in, their expressions shifting from skepticism to cautious hope. You're talking about taking down some powerful people, Modesto said. You sure you know what you're getting into? I'm 62 years old, Isaac replied. I've built buildings that will stand for 100 years. I've buried a wife I loved more than my own life. I've raised a good son who's been systematically destroyed by people who see children as profit centers. I know exactly what I'm getting into. The question is, are you willing to help? Ricky didn't hesitate. I'm in. Whatever you need. Same, Modesto said. My brother's been a shell of himself for years. If there's a chance to make this right, I'll take it. Isaac nodded. Then here's what I need. I need you to find the others. All the men Alice has done this to. All the fathers who've been through this system. We need numbers, we need stories, and we need evidence. Anything you've got, emails, texts, court documents, financial records. Bring it all together. What are you going to do? Ricky asked. Isaac smiled that cold smile. I'm going to make friends with Reynaldo Whitaker. The plan was audacious, maybe even insane. But Isaac had learned long ago that the best way to defeat an enemy was to get close to them. Reynaldo was the weak link, greedy, proud, and hungry for the validation of other successful men. Isaac had built a successful construction business over 30 years. He'd developed properties, managed projects worth millions, and had a reputation as a man who knew his way around a deal. All he had to do was present himself as a potential investor, someone interested in commercial real estate, and Reynaldo would come running. He called Whitaker Holdings and asked to speak with Reynaldo directly. When the man's assistant tried to screen him, Isaac dropped enough industry jargon and mentioned enough local projects to get through. Mr. Whitaker, Isaac said when Reynaldo picked up, my name is Isaac Thornton. I own Thornton Construction. I'm looking to diversify into property investment, and your name keeps coming up as someone who knows the market. He could practically hear Reynaldo preening on the other end of the line. Well, Mr. Thornton, I appreciate that. I'd be happy to discuss opportunities. Why don't we meet for lunch? I can show you what I'm working on. They set a meeting for the following Tuesday at an upscale steakhouse downtown. Isaac hung up and allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. Phase 1 was in motion. Curtis watched from the kitchen doorway. You're really going to sit down with him? The man who helped destroy my life. I'm going to do more than sit down with him, Isaac said. I'm going to make him think I'm his new best friend. And while he's busy trying to impress me and take my money, I'm going to find out every dirty secret he has. Then I'm going to use those secrets to tear his world apart. Curtis was quiet for a moment, then nodded slowly. I want to help. You will. But right now, your job is to stay out of sight, take care of Emma, and get stronger. When this goes down, I need you sharp. Can you do that? Yeah, Curtis said, and for the first time in months, Isaac heard determination in his son's voice instead of defeat. I can do that. The lunch with Reynaldo went exactly as Isaac predicted. The man spent the first 20 minutes talking about his success, his connections, his vision for commercial real estate in the region. He name-dropped politicians and business leaders, painted himself as a kingmaker. Isaac played his part perfectly, impressed but not fawning, knowledgeable but deferring to Reynaldo's expertise. He asked smart questions about cap rates and tenant profiles, about zoning and development potential. He was exactly what Reynaldo wanted, a wealthy investor with money to spend and an ego that could be manipulated. I've got a deal in the works right now, Reynaldo said, leaning in conspiratorially. Multifamily property on the east side. The owner's motivated to sell. I can get it for under market, flip some money into basic renovations, and we're looking at a 15% return within 18 months. Sounds promising, Isaac said. What's the catch? Reynaldo laughed. No catch. Just good business. Though I'll tell you, having the right connections helps. My wife, Georgina, she's connected to the family court system. We get a lot of tenants through her nonprofit work. Single mothers who need housing, you know? Built-in stable tenant base. Isaac kept his expression neutral, but internally, he was cataloging every word. This was it, the connection between the custody scheme and Reynaldo's business. They were placing the mothers they helped in Reynaldo's properties, probably at inflated rents, probably subsidized by the child support payments from the fathers they destroyed. That's smart, Isaac said. Vertical integration. I like it. They talked for another hour. By the time lunch ended, Reynaldo was convinced he'd found a new mark. He invited Isaac to tour some properties the following week, even suggested they become partners on future deals. Isaac agreed to everything, playing the eager investor. As they shook hands outside the restaurant, Reynaldo clapped him on the shoulder. I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship, Isaac. I think you're right, Isaac said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. That night, he met with Ricky and Modesto again. They'd found 2 more men, Brian Young and Jeremiah Flynn, both of whom had lost custody to Alice in the past 6 years. Both had the same story, whirlwind romance, pregnancy, marriage or commitment, then sudden betrayal and destruction in family court. Judge Wagner presiding. Terry O'Connell representing Alice. Georgina's nonprofit somehow involved in the background. It's bigger than we thought, Modesto said. Brian found 3 other guys through online support groups. All different mothers, but the pattern is the same. Same judge, same lawyers in the network, same outcome. Fathers destroyed, children kept from them, child support flowing. Isaac studied the pattern map he'd been building. 16 confirmed cases over 7 years. That was just what they'd found so far. The amount of money involved was staggering. If each father was paying even $700 a month in child support, that was over $130,000 a year collectively. Multiply that over years, and you were looking at millions. How does it work? Brian asked. Where does all that money go? Some goes to the mothers, Isaac said. But I think a lot of it flows through Georgina's nonprofit. She places the mothers in Reynaldo's properties. They pay rent, probably subsidized by benefits and child support. Reynaldo takes a cut. Georgina's nonprofit takes administrative fees for helping arrange housing and support services. The lawyers get paid for the court work. Everyone profits except the fathers and the children. We need proof, Jeremiah said. We need hard evidence that'll hold up. We'll get it, Isaac promised. But we need to be smart. These people have been running this scheme for years. They're careful. If we tip our hand too early, they'll cover their tracks, and we'll have nothing. He laid out the next phase of the plan. Ricky and Modesto would continue gathering victims, building the database of destroyed families. Brian, who worked in IT, would help analyze the financial records they could access publicly. Jeremiah, who had experience in journalism before his life fell apart, would work on documenting everything in a format that could go public. Meanwhile, Isaac would continue getting close to Reynaldo, gathering intelligence from the inside. What about Curtis? Ricky asked. How's he holding up? Getting stronger every day, Isaac said. But I'm keeping him out of sight until the right moment. When this goes public, he needs to be the face of it, the father fighting to get his son back. But right now, if the Whitakers know he's with me, they'll see the connection and shut down. Over the next 3 weeks, Isaac became a regular presence in Reynaldo's world. He toured properties, sat in on meetings with contractors and property managers, and gradually earned the man's trust. Reynaldo was the kind of guy who loved to brag, and after a couple of whiskeys, he'd talk about anything. That's how Isaac learned about the tax fraud. Reynaldo was running 2 sets of books on his properties, one for the IRS showing minimal profit, another showing the real income. He was also inflating expenses by using shell companies owned by family members to bill for maintenance and services that were never performed. Isaac documented all of it, recording conversations on his phone, photographing documents that Reynaldo carelessly left on his desk when Isaac visited his office. He also learned more about the custody scheme, though Reynaldo never called it that. He talked about how Georgina had helped Alice find her strength, how they were protecting children from unstable fathers, how the system needed people like them to look out for vulnerable mothers. The self-justification was textbook. They'd convinced themselves they were doing good work, that the fathers they destroyed somehow deserved it. It made Isaac sick, but he played along, nodding sympathetically, asking questions that made Reynaldo feel important and understood. Then came the break Isaac had been waiting for. Reynaldo invited him to a charity gala for Safe Families Foundation. It'll be good for you to meet Georgina, he said. And you should see the kind of work we do. Plus, the networking is fantastic. Half the county government will be there. Isaac accepted immediately. This was his chance to see the whole operation up close, to meet Georgina on her turf, and to identify all the players in the network. The gala was held at an upscale hotel downtown. Isaac wore his best suit and arrived fashionably late. The ballroom was full of well-dressed people, champagne flowing, a string quartet playing in the corner. On the walls were blown-up photos of smiling children with captions about second chances and safe homes. Reynaldo spotted Isaac immediately and waved him over to where he stood with his wife and daughter. Georgina Whitaker was exactly what Isaac expected, polished, commanding, with a smile that never quite reached her eyes. She was in her late 50s, expensively dressed, wearing her authority like armor. Isaac Thornton, Reynaldo said jovially. Meet my wife, Georgina, and our daughter, Alice. Isaac shook Georgina's hand first, her grip firm and assessing. A pleasure, Mrs. Whitaker. Reynaldo speaks very highly of your work. Please, call me Georgina. And thank you. We do what we can for families in need. Then he turned to Alice. and it took every ounce of his control not to show what he was thinking. This was the woman who had destroyed his son, who was keeping his grandson from him, who had done this to multiple men without remorse. She was pretty in a calculated way, her blonde hair styled perfectly, her dress designer, her makeup flawless. She smiled at Isaac with practiced warmth and extended her hand. "It's nice to meet you, Mr. Thornton." Isaac took her hand briefly. Likewise. Up close, he could see what Curtis had described, the performance of it all. Alice was playing a role, just like her mother. The concerned single mother, the woman who'd overcome adversity, the victim of male incompetence who'd found her strength. "Alice is one of our success stories," Georgina said, putting an arm around her daughter. "She's raising two beautiful children on her own after very difficult circumstances. We're so proud of her." "Two children?" Isaac asked, knowing the answer but needing to hear her say it. "Matthew and Maya," Alice said, her voice catching just slightly, a practiced emotional beat. "My son and daughter. They're my whole world." Isaac wanted to call her a liar right there, to expose her in front of everyone. But that wasn't the plan. The plan required patience. "That must be challenging," he said instead. "Raising children alone." "It is," Alice said. "But my family has been so supportive. And organizations like Mom's Foundation, they make all the difference for mothers like me." The conversation continued, Isaac playing the interested donor, Georgina and Reynaldo pitching him on supporting Safe Families Foundation. Around them, the gala hummed with activity. Isaac noted the politicians, the judges, the lawyers. He saw Judge Dorothea Wagner holding court near the silent auction tables. Terry O'Connell was working the room, glad-handing and networking. This was the whole corrupt machine on display, congratulating itself for its charity while profiting from destroyed families. Isaac excused himself after a while, saying he wanted to check out the auction items. He circulated through the crowd, introducing himself, making connections, taking mental notes on who was friendly with whom. When he passed Judge Wagner, she was talking to Georgina and another woman Isaac didn't recognize. He lingered near enough to overhear without being obvious. 3 more cases next week, Wagner was saying. All slam dunks. O'Connell's got his ducks in a row. Good, Georgina replied. We've got housing lined up for 2 of them already. The third might take some time, but we'll work it out. They were talking about it openly, casually, like it was just business. Because to them it was. Isaac moved away before they noticed him and found a quiet corner to collect himself. The anger was a living thing in his chest, but he couldn't let it show. Not yet. Not until he had everything he needed. He spent another hour at the gala, making donations that would give him access to future events, collecting business cards, positioning himself as someone these people would want to keep around. By the time he left, Georgina had invited him to join the foundation's board of advisors. We need people like you, she'd said. Successful businessmen who understand what we're trying to do. Would you be interested? Isaac had smiled and said he'd be honored. In reality, he was one step closer to bringing her whole world crashing down. That night, he met with his team, the growing group of fathers and allies who were building the case against the Whitakers. Isaac brought photos from the gala, including ones of Georgina with Judge Wagner and Terry O'Connell. This is our proof of collaboration, Brian said, analyzing the images. They're not even trying to hide it. Because they don't think they need to, Isaac said. They've been doing this for years with no consequences. They think they're untouchable. So how do we touch them? Jeremiah asked. Isaac laid out the timeline. They had documentation now, financial records showing the flow of money, testimony from over 20 fathers, evidence of the connections between Georgina, Wagner, O'Connell, and the custody cases. What they needed next was the smoking gun, the undeniable proof that would hold up under scrutiny. I'm getting close, Isaac said. Reynaldo trusts me now. Georgina's bringing me into the inner circle. Give me a few more weeks, and I'll have access to everything. But time was something they didn't have unlimited amounts of. Curtis was getting anxious, worried about Matthew, wanting to act. Isaac understood the impulse, but he knew rushing would ruin everything. Then fate handed them an opportunity. Curtis got a call from a blocked number. When he answered, it was Alice. I need to talk to you, she said, her voice tense. Can you meet me? Curtis looked at his father, who was listening on speaker. Isaac nodded and mouthed, record it. Why? Curtis asked cautiously. Just, please. Tomorrow. The coffee shop on Maple Street. 11 a.m. Come alone. She hung up before Curtis could respond. It's a trap, Curtis said immediately. Probably, Isaac agreed. But it's also a chance to rattle her, see what she's thinking. We record everything, stay in public, and see what she wants. The next morning, Isaac wired Curtis with a recording device, a small unit Brian had provided that looked like a phone charger in Curtis's jacket pocket. They went over the plan multiple times. Stay calm. Don't admit to anything. Let Alice do the talking, and try to get her to reveal information. Isaac watched from his truck in the parking lot as Curtis entered the coffee shop. He could see Alice already there, sitting in a corner booth, looking nervous. The conversation started awkwardly. Alice offered to buy Curtis coffee, which he declined. She fidgeted with her cup, not making eye contact. Why did you want to meet? Curtis asked. I wanted to see how you were doing. I heard you were living in your car with Emma. That's not okay. Curtis felt anger flare, but kept his voice level. You're the one who put me there. You and your parents. I know it seems that way. It doesn't seem that way. That's what happened. You lied to a judge, took my son, took the apartment, and destroyed my life. Alice's eyes filled with tears, and Curtis recognized the trick now, the manufactured emotion designed to manipulate. But this time, something seemed different. The tears looked almost real. I didn't know it would go this far, she said quietly. I didn't know they would. My parents, they took over. They said they were protecting Matthew, protecting me. But Curtis, I never wanted you to lose everything. Then give him back. Let me see my son. I can't. My mother. She's got lawyers. She's got everything documented. If I try to change anything now, I don't know what she'll do. Curtis leaned forward. You're afraid of your own mother? Alice wiped her eyes. You don't understand what she's like. Once she decides something, that's it. There's no changing her mind. And my father, he backs her up on everything. They've got this whole system, and I'm just... She trailed off, looking genuinely miserable. Is that what I was? Curtis asked. Part of a system? Alice didn't answer, which was answer enough. How many others? Curtis pressed. How many men have you done this to? It's not like that. How many, Alice? She looked away. I don't keep count. My mother, she finds men she thinks are weak, or vulnerable, or whatever. She introduces me. Says it's about finding someone stable, someone good. But then after the baby comes, she starts pointing out all their flaws. How they're not good enough. How they'll hurt the child eventually. She convinces me that leaving is the right thing, that protecting the child is all that matters. And you just go along with it? Destroy lives because your mommy tells you to. Alice's face hardened. You don't get to judge me. You don't know what it's like, being controlled by her. She has dirt on everyone. She knows how to destroy people. If I don't do what she says, she'll what? Turn on you? Use her system against you. The fear in Alice's eyes confirmed it. She was as much a prisoner of this scheme as the fathers were victims of it. The difference was, she'd chosen to be complicit. I want to see Matthew, Curtis said. Set up a visit. Today. Right now. I can't. My mother has him. She watches him during the day while I work. If I brought you there, she'd know. I don't care what she'd do. That's my son. Curtis, please. Just give me time. Let me figure something out. I'll find a way to let you see him, but I need to do it carefully. I don't believe you. Alice reached across the table, trying to take his hand. He pulled away. Please. I know I hurt you. I know I've done terrible things. But I'm trying to make it right. Just trust me. Curtis stood up. You lost my trust when you lied to a judge. You lost it when you kicked me and my daughter out of our home. You lost it when you kept my son from me. I'm done being manipulated by you and your family. He walked out, his heart pounding. In the truck, Isaac had heard every word through the recording device. She's scared, Isaac said as Curtis climbed in. And she's looking for a way out. Or she's setting me up for something. Playing the victim, so I'll let my guard down. Maybe. But that fear was real. She's caught between wanting free from her mother and being terrified of what Georgina will do if she crosses her. They drove back to Isaac's house, both men processing what had happened. Isaac knew they could use this. Alice's fear, her desperation, her guilty conscience. She was the weak link in the Whitaker chain. That night, Isaac made a decision. It was time to accelerate the plan. He called Irwin's daughter, Madeline the court reporter, and asked her to reach out to other court staff she trusted. He needed people on the inside who would be willing to testify about Judge Wagner's corruption if it came to that. He reached out to a former colleague who now worked as an investigative journalist for the regional newspaper. He didn't reveal the full scope of what he'd found yet, but he planted seeds, mentioned there might be a story about family court corruption worth investigating. And he set up another meeting with Reynaldo, this one to discuss becoming a formal partner in Whitaker Holdings. He needed access to Reynaldo's office, to his files, to the evidence that would tie everything together. The pieces were moving into place. Within 2 weeks, Isaac would have everything he needed. And then the Whitakers would learn what it meant to face a father with nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. Curtis spent his days researching family law, documenting every interaction with Alice and her family, building his own case for when the time came to fight for Matthew. Emma was thriving with the stability of Isaac's house, regular meals, a warm bed, her grandfather's steady presence. One afternoon, Curtis found his father in the garage, working on an old motorcycle. Isaac had always found clarity in working with his hands. "I want to thank you," Curtis said, "for everything. The house, the plan, believing in me when I'd stopped believing in myself." Isaac looked up from the engine. "You're my son. There's nothing to thank me for." Still, I was ready to give up. Thought there was no way to fight them. You showed me there's always a way. Isaac set down his wrench. "Your mother used to say that problems are just solutions waiting to be found. You just have to be willing to look hard enough and work long enough. The Whitakers think they're invincible because no one's ever fought back effectively. We're going to change that. What if it doesn't work? What if they're too powerful? Then we make them not powerful. Power is just a perception, Curtis. It exists because people believe in it. We shatter that perception, and their power goes with it." The next breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Brian, doing his digital forensics work, had managed to hack into Terry O'Connell's email server. It wasn't legal, but at this point, Isaac didn't care about legality. He cared about justice. The emails were a goldmine. Conversations between O'Connell and Judge Wagner discussing case outcomes before trials. Messages between Georgina and O'Connell coordinating custody schedules to benefit Safe Families Foundation placements. Financial records showing O'Connell receiving consulting fees from Georgina's nonprofit. It was all there. The corruption, the collusion, the systematic destruction of families for profit. "This is it," Brian said, his hands shaking as he showed Isaac the files. "This is everything we need." Isaac studied the documents, his mind racing. They had the evidence now. The question was how to deploy it for maximum effect. "We go public," Jeremiah said. "Take it all to the media, the state attorney general, the FBI. Blow this whole thing open." "No," Isaac said slowly. "Not yet. If we go public now, they'll have time to craft a defense, hide evidence, call in favors. We need to hit them all at once, too fast for them to react. And we need Curtis to get Matthew back first. Because once this explodes, custody battles are going to be the least of the Whitakers' problems." "So what's the play?" Ricky asked. Isaac smiled, that cold smile they'd all come to recognize. "We use Alice. She's scared, she's guilty, and she's looking for a way out. We give her one, but it comes with a price." He had Curtis reach out to Alice again, this time with a simple message. "I know you're afraid of your mother. I know you want out. Meet me tomorrow. I have a solution." Alice responded within an hour, agreeing to meet. This time, the meeting was at a park. Neutral ground, public, with Isaac watching from a distance. Curtis came with an offer that Isaac had carefully scripted. "I want to see Matthew," Curtis said without preamble. "And I want you to testify against your parents and their whole operation." Alice paled. "What are you talking about?" Curtis pulled out a tablet and showed her some of the emails Brian had found. Her face went from pale to ashen as she read. "We have everything," Curtis said quietly. "The financial fraud, the court corruption, all of it. Your parents are going down, Alice. The only question is whether you go down with them or whether you save yourself." "They'll destroy me," she whispered. "They're destroying you anyway. You said yourself you're afraid of your mother, that you're being controlled. This is your chance to break free. What do you want?" "Joint custody of Matthew. Immediately. And your testimony about how this whole scheme works, how many men, how the system operates, everything. You do that, and when the legal proceedings start, we'll make sure the prosecutors know you cooperated. You'll have a chance at a reduced sentence, maybe immunity. And if I don't, then you go down with them. Your choice." Alice sat in silence for a long time, tears streaming down her face, real ones this time. Finally, she looked up at Curtis. "I need protection. My mother, if she finds out I'm talking to you, We'll protect you," Curtis said. "But you need to decide now. Are you with us or against us?" She took a shaky breath. "I'm with you. God help me. I'm with you." The next 48 hours were a whirlwind. Alice, terrified but committed, brought Matthew to a supervised meeting with Curtis at Isaac's lawyer's office. The reunion between father and son broke everyone in the room. Matthew, now 13 months old, didn't recognize Curtis at first, but within minutes he was laughing in his father's arms. Alice also brought documents, internal communications from Safe Families Foundation, financial records, lists of cases her mother had coordinated with Judge Wagner. She gave a videotaped deposition detailing the scheme, naming names, providing dates and specifics. "My mother started this about 8 years ago," Alice said on the recording. She'd been on the Family Court Advisory Board and noticed how much money was involved in custody cases. She recruited Terry O'Connell, who was struggling in his practice. They approached Judge Wagner with a proposal. Wagner would get cash payments and campaign support. O'Connell would get a steady stream of clients, and my mother would get to place mothers in my father's properties and collect fees through her nonprofit. "And your role?" the lawyer asked. I was the bait. My mother would introduce me to men she thought would be good targets. Usually guys who were kind, maybe a little naive, who had stable jobs. I'd date them, get pregnant, and then after the baby came, we'd execute the split. O'Connell would handle the legal work. Wagner would rule in our favor, and my mother would help me get benefits and housing while the fathers paid support but lost their kids. "How many times?" Alice's voice broke. 7. Curtis was number 7. The lawyer documented everything. Meanwhile, Isaac was coordinating with the authorities. He'd reached out to the state attorney general's office through a contact who owed him a favor. He'd presented them with a preview of the evidence and demanded action. The AG's office launched an emergency investigation. Within a week, they had enough to move. On a Tuesday morning, simultaneous raids hit Whitaker Holdings, Safe Families Foundation, Judge Wagner's office, and Terry O'Connell's law practice. FBI agents, state investigators, and IRS auditors descended with warrants, seizing computers, files, and financial records. Georgina and Reynaldo were arrested at their home. Wagner was removed from the bench immediately. O'Connell was taken into custody at his office. The news coverage was explosive. Local stations ran stories about the family court corruption scheme. The newspaper ran a front-page expose written by Isaac's journalist friend, detailing the network of abuse that had destroyed dozens of families. Curtis watched the coverage with Matthew in his lap and Emma beside him. Alice was in protective custody, cooperating fully with investigators. She'd lose custody of both children while the case proceeded, but she'd avoided the harshest charges by turning state's evidence. "Is it over?" Curtis asked his father. Isaac watched Georgina's perp walk on TV, her face no longer polished, but haggard and terrified. "The legal part is just beginning. But yes, for us, it's over. You have your son back. The people who hurt you are going to face justice." The trial took months. Georgina, Reynaldo, Judge Wagner, and Terry O'Connell were all charged with racketeering, fraud, corruption, and conspiracy. The evidence was overwhelming. The emails, the financial records, the testimony from Alice and the 23 fathers who'd been victimized. Georgina tried to cut a deal, offering to testify against the others, but the AG's office wasn't interested. She was the architect of the scheme and would face the full weight of the law. Reynaldo attempted to flee the country, but was caught at the airport. His property empire collapsed as federal investigators seized assets tied to the criminal enterprise. Judge Wagner lost her law license before the trial even began. She'd spent 20 years on the bench, building a reputation as a fair and thoughtful jurist. All of it meant nothing now. She'd sold her integrity for cash and political support, and now she'd spend the next 15 years in federal prison. Terry O'Connell turned on everyone, trying to save himself, but it didn't help. He'd been too integral to the operation. The prosecution was merciless. When the verdicts came down, Georgina received 23 years. Reynaldo got 18. Wagner got 15. O'Connell got 12. Isaac sat in the courtroom gallery with Curtis, Emma, and Matthew, watching as the judge read the sentences. Around them sat other fathers, Ricky, Modesto, Brian, Jeremiah, and others. Men who'd been destroyed by this system and were finally seeing justice. As the deputies led Georgina away in handcuffs, she turned and looked directly at Isaac. There was no defiance in her eyes now, just the hollow recognition of complete defeat. Isaac met her gaze and didn't look away. She'd built her power on the broken bodies of families, on stolen children and destroyed fathers. Now she'd spend the next 2 decades behind bars, stripped of everything she'd valued: her status, her control, her freedom. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Curtis gave a statement, speaking for all the fathers who'd been victimized. "Today isn't about revenge," he said, his voice steady. "It's about accountability. It's about making sure that what happened to us can never happen to another family. The system failed us, but we didn't give up. And to any father out there who's fighting to see his children, who's been told he has no rights, who's been crushed by corrupt people in positions of power, don't stop fighting. Find allies. Gather evidence. And never, ever give up on your kids." The questions continued, but Isaac pulled Curtis away. They'd said what needed to be said. The rest was up to the system now. In the weeks that followed, Curtis got emergency custody of Matthew officially. Alice, true to the deal, received a reduced sentence: 3 years probation and mandatory counseling in exchange for her cooperation. She'd have supervised visitation with both children, but Curtis would have primary custody. Emma was enrolled in school again, thriving and happy to have her little brother back. Curtis found work at Isaac's construction company, learning the trade, rebuilding his life one day at a time. The family court system underwent massive reforms. The state legislature passed new oversight laws, created an independent review board for custody cases, and implemented stricter conflict of interest rules. It wouldn't fix everything, but it was a start. Isaac watched his son teach Matthew to walk in the backyard one Saturday afternoon. Emma was doing cartwheels nearby, her laughter carrying on the wind. This was what he'd fought for, not revenge, though that had been sweet, but this. Family, justice, a future. Curtis caught his eye and smiled, and Isaac smiled back. The kid had come a long way from that hollow-eyed man living in his car at a gas station. He'd faced his demons, fought for his children, and come out the other side stronger. "Papa," Emma called. "Watch this." Isaac walked over, ready to watch whatever trick his granddaughter had mastered. As he did, he thought about Georgina in her cell, about Reynaldo stripped of his empire, about Wagner's fall from grace. They'd thought they were untouchable, that their system was perfect. They'd never accounted for a father with nothing to lose and everything to fight for. They'd never imagined that their arrogance would be their downfall. They'd underestimated the love of a father for his son, a grandfather for his grandson, and the collective power of broken men who'd found each other and refused to stay broken. And that had been their fatal mistake. As the sun set over the property Isaac had built with his own hands, he sat on the porch steps and watched his family, whole again, healed and free. This was victory, not the courtroom kind, though that had mattered, but the kind that came from refusing to accept injustice, from fighting when fighting seemed hopeless, from believing that even the most powerful could fall if you found the right pressure point. Curtis sat down beside him, Matthew drowsy in his arms. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for everything, for believing me when no one else would, for fighting when I couldn't." Isaac put an arm around his son's shoulders. "That's what fathers do. We fight for our kids. Always." They sat in comfortable silence as darkness fell, the house lit warmly behind them, Emma's laughter still echoing from inside where she was playing. This was more than revenge satisfied. This was a family restored, a system exposed, and a message sent to anyone who thought they could weaponize children for profit. The Whitakers had learned the hard way that some fathers won't stop fighting. Some fathers will burn your empire to the ground to protect their children. And some fathers have the patience, the intelligence, and the absolute conviction to see it through to the bitter end. Isaac Thornton was one of those fathers, and his family would never forget what he'd done for them, not with vengeance, but with strategic precision, unwavering determination, and the kind of love that moves mountains. The battle was over. Justice had been served, and the Thornton family could finally begin to heal. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.